Hey everybody, this is Ethan again. Here to talk about the Bills tonight. First of all, thanks for all the comments, all the stuff about Panthers and Broncos. Keep sending those around. Definitely not time sensitive. I want as many people to see those as possible. And tonight we're going to do the Bills. So looking at Buffalo, unfortunately, I can't give them the player that I've wanted to give them for such a long time. I've had Cam Newton at 3 to the Bills forever, and I do think if he slips there, they will take him just because Chan Gailey, he has had control of the offense on 5 teams in his career. All 5 had John Elway, Cordell Stewart, Troy Aikman, Jay Fiedler, and Reggie Ball at quarterback. Of course, Reggie Ball in college, but still, mobile guys. That's what he loves, and Cam Newton is basically Chan Gailey's prototype player. But I don't think they're going to get him now. I don't think that he's going to fall past Carolina. So, looking at that number 1 pick, number 3 overall, they have a BPA strategy up in Buffalo. So you also have to think about the scheme that's going on and how they would rank those players effective to the scheme. Looking at offense, Curtis Monkins runs a pretty basic set. They like bigger wide receivers who can stretch the field, so A.J. Green definitely fits that mold if they think he's the best player. They have a pretty strong running game, which is nice to know about. Of course, they just drafted C.J. Spiller last year. They have Fred Jackson with him. Offensive line, they could use some depth, but I don't think they need somebody quite this early. One of my favorite players on that team is Demetrius Bell, Karl Malone's relative, who has turned into a very nice left tackle. They have a nice tradition of developing left tackles in Buffalo with also Jason Peters coming out of that program. It's interesting to see how they've sort of taken these raw offensive line talents and molded them. Bell is a very good left tackle, and they are pretty good across the rest of the line too. They could go for some depth later, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So I think they'll probably focus on defense unless A.J. Green is the guy for the pick. And defensively, their defensive coordinator, Edwards, comes from Miami, linebacker coach there, and he runs a hybrid 3-4-4-3. And the 3-4 last year actually was not run nearly as much as some people thought it was. There was some sort of combination of the two, but regardless, they couldn't stop the run. So they need to improve that front seven immediately. And I feel so bad for Paul Posluszny, who I love, but he is so horribly miscast in a 3-4 defense, it kills me. Anyway, instead of harping about Posluszny, let's look at the possible picks. Patrick Peterson, cornerback. He definitely has that star quality they're looking for in Buffalo. Star quality that Newton could have brought. Peterson could definitely bring on the defensive side of the ball. Not a front seven player, but great talent, great athlete. Could be BPA for them. Robert Quinn, big defensive end, good pass rush. Can he stand up? Probably, but we don't know for sure. I don't think he's particularly fluid, but he could probably do a passable job at least. Von Miller is an interesting guy to think about at 3, just because he can stand up, and he is superb athlete, character guy, and an interesting person to think about there. He'd be a good fit for that defense. However, my choice for the pick is a defensive tackle who can also play defensive end in 3-4 set. And it's not Nick Fairley, it's Mr. Marcel Darius out of Alabama. This might be a little bit high for Darius, and I'm not sure if they're going to have him as BPA. And if they don't, then I could definitely see them taking a guy like Peterson or Green or Miller. I mean, that's what this propensity thing is all about. Talking about who they might take, not making any guarantees or anything like that. And if Newton falls to 3, I think that he could definitely be the pick. But Darius is perfect for them, and they need him really badly. And he can play 3-4 defensive end. He can play 4-3 defensive tackle. He would go in with that sort of thought process that went into the selections of Terrell Troop and Alex Carrington last year, where these guys are versatile and can play in both schemes. Carrington can play 3-4 or 4-3 D end, and Troop can play 3-4 D end or 4-3 D tackle. This versatility aspect seems to be important to the Bills and Gailey and Buddy Nix. So I think Darius, first of all, if I was the GM of the Bills, I'd probably pick Darius. But more importantly, I think that he sort of fits what they're trying to do down there in terms of the scheme versatility. So I think there's a chance that he could be number 3 overall. I'm not as sure about that pick as I have been about the past couple. Like, I'm pretty sure Newton can go to Carolina, and I'm pretty sure Bowers can go to Denver. But I think that Darius is a viable choice for them. But of course, they could take Quinn, Miller, Peterson, possibly Fairley, maybe AJ Green. I don't think I'm a little bit less sure about Fairley just because I don't think he's scheme diverse for them. And Quinn might have the red flags that they're not looking for because they do have a character aspect to looking at guys in Buffalo. So maybe not those two quite as much, but definitely the rest. But right now, I'd put Darius as my slight favorite. Looking later in the draft, Gailey likes to take guys from smaller schools, and he tends to skew east. He only had one pick last year in the first 4 rounds that was not from across the Mississippi River, and that was Carrington, who's in Arkansas, who's still sort of in his hot zone in terms of recruiting and looking at talent because Gailey is a Southern guy naturally and he knows Arkansas. So I think that looking east and south is really important for the Bills, and I think that that should be kept in mind when looking for talent for them. Round two, right now, I think that if he slips, and he probably won't slip, I'm not as high as him as some other guys are, but if he slips, I think Muhammad Wilkerson would be an obvious selection for them. Just because, once again, you have the scheme diversity, you have the athletic ability, and he'd be a pretty obvious pick for them. And I think it'd be BPA at that point, just in terms of athletic projectability. I think he's raw, and I don't think he's ready yet to be a consistent contributor. But I think he's a possible pick for Buffalo for sure. The one guy from across the Mississippi River who I think they can go for from a small school, just because of his sensational athletic ability, is Dante Moak out of Nevada. If they think he can play both defenses and they go to see him in a personal workout, I could see them bucking the trend and picking him, especially if he slips to early round two. I think that he's the kind of athletic specimen that they're looking for in Buffalo. And I could totally see Gailey and Nix taking him over some more established guys from safer areas that they have been more used to scouting. So, looking at other factors, going back to the southern and eastern concepts, I think that some players to look out for the Bills are at the tight end position because they're a little bit weak there. Rob Hausler out of Florida Atlantic, athletic guy who can do whatever you need tight end to do. Steven Skelton out of Fordham a little bit later in the draft, brother of John Skelton, who got picked last year by Arizona. He has some nice physical tools that the Bills could want to look out for in their tight end because last year they didn't get a ton of production at all from their tight ends. Wide receiver-wise, Lester Jean out of Florida Atlantic would be another one of those long, lanky, project-type guys like Donald Jones and David Nelson and Steve Johnson, who have turned out pretty well. I was very impressed by them when I saw them play the Patriots at the end of the last season. And I think that they have a really nice core there in Buffalo. Quarterback-wise, not exactly sure. I see them taking perhaps Jake Locker if he slips. But once again, so far out of Gailey's comfort zone, I'm not sure if he'd be a guy they'd look at, though he does have the mobility that he likes, so that's possible. And maybe even a guy late in the draft, a sort of project guy like Jeff Van Camp out of Florida Atlantic, even though he's not as mobile, he impressed me a lot at the combine. So, possibly him. But I'm not so sure that if they don't get a quarterback early that they're going to take one in the draft. Just because Fitzpatrick has proven to be a pretty good QB, and offense isn't the major problem in Buffalo. Defense is. Other defensive guys I could look at, just quick hits. Chris Neal out of West Virginia later in the draft reminds me a lot of Kyle Williams, and I think that that sort of familiarity could breed a sort of selection there. If they end up not taking a good 3-4 guy early on, I could see Zane Parr of Virginia being a pretty good selection for them. And linebacker-wise, Mario Addison out of Troy is a guy to think about. Southern School, they took Levi Brown there in the past. And he is the kind of guy who can put his hand down in a 4-3 and also stand up in a 3-4, which is a really nice combination. Overall, just remember that scheme diversity on defense, and remember they go BPA. can't really project BPA as well as some other drafting strategies just because BPA is so dependent on what goes on around the team. Those are just a couple of guys to look out for the position. I just definitely keep that scheme diversity in mind when looking at mocking the Bills defensively, offensively, vertical pass offense, big offensive linemen, athletic offensive linemen. And I think that's a pretty good synopsis of what they're going to do. So that's all for tonight. Tomorrow it'll be the Bengals, always fun to talk about. And yeah, if you have any questions about the Bills or the Panthers, the Broncos, or even the Bengals, I suppose, feel free to tweet me at Ethan Ham, leave a comment here, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So thanks for watching, guys. Keep spreading around my videos, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.